during Climate Week already. Before we start, I have some minor questions for you. May I ask, who's looking forward to the insights and the discussion of the carbon ecosystem? Just raise your hand. Okay, most of it.
If not, you can leave now.
Perfect. To make it more concrete, who's really excited about it because you have heard already from the carbon ecosystem or attended at least our webinar? Oh. Okay, very good, very good. Almost everyone, huh? Not so bad. So, one last question. If you haven't raised your hand so far, because you're here only for breakfast, sorry, we don't have. You're invited to grab a coffee outside. So, as I promised, last question before we start. Who's really nervous when she takes a look in this audience and the speakers and yeah. So that's me. I'm your host, Verena Colonna from Estanium today, and welcome everyone. And now, before we go through the agenda, I will hand over to Ricardo Torres, Undersecretary of Environment in Querétaro, Mexico. Warm applause for Ricardo.
Perfect. Do you see this? Can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Perfect. So, thank you so much for coming this morning with us and let us explain a little bit more about the carbon ecosystem, an initiative from many organizations trying to decarbonize, in this case, Querétaro's economy. Querétaro is a Mexican state very near to Mexico City, where we have a very industrialized concept around the capital city, but also we have a wonderful natural protected area in the north part of the state. So in the last 2 years, we joined all the concepts in the state of Querétaro in order to involve the industry and the companies, the economy in the state, in order to protect our environment and to take care about our biodiversity, our natural resources. So in this way, we have created some initiatives. We have been working with Grupo Ecológico Sierra Gorda for many, many years, almost 20 years of collaboration, making and trying to develop many kind of strategies in order to pay environmental services for the local people, the owners of the land, who preserve their nature and give us an offer for all the people in the state of Querétaro environmental services that we use in the capital city and not the municipalities. Querétaro is around 18 municipalities. We have 2.5 million people, and we are part of the Bajío in the central part of Mexico. Has been developed since 90s when the trade agreement with United States and Canada appears in our history. We started to industrialize all the corridor since Querétaro, Guanajuato, Aguascalientes, and Jalisco. So in that way, we have many investments in Querétaro. We have been growing very fast over the last 20 years. And in the other hand, we have a wonderful spaces in the north of the state where the nature and the biodiversity is incredible. And we need to connect in a protocol, in a local protocol, where the companies pay for their impact in greenhouse gases emissions, CO2 emissions, and then the people from the forest, the people from the communities can have some of the benefits for this growth over the last 20 years. In this way, we created a compensable tax about carbon tax that is compensable for the companies. This is not a cut and trade system. This is since ton one, they have to pay about $34. But the specialty of this tax is that it works since the beginning. It starts as a compensable tax, where the companies can decide if they pay to conserve nature, to pay environmental services, or pay a tax for the government, and the government are using this tax in order to avoid vulnerability and increasing risk of our climate reality over the last 2 years, for instance. So the carbon ecosystem, it's an idea that has been grown since only a year, where I met Dr. Gunter here in the last climate week. We started the application of this tax in the local protocol group with Grupo for about 2 years. In the last year, in the past climate week, I met Dr. Gunter, and then we initiate a collaboration together where we can join all the efforts that the Siemens and Stadium were doing by the using of the Green as a software that allows the companies to calculate and estimate their carbon emissions over their operations in different phases. And that's with that idea, then we met with Alexander Watson from Open Forest in order to apply some technology in the forest and calculate accurate and give transparency and accuracy to the measurements in the forest. And after that, with Calirius, with a carbon marketplace that can unify all the projects that are being part of this strategy. So then the companies in Querétaro have an option in which they can calculate and estimate their emissions, and then automatically they can have information about the places in where they can compensate their emissions, the specific allocation in Sierra Gorda in which they have their carbon reductions and absorptions, and giving us information for the people, the citizens of the state of Querétaro that are part of this strategy, that are part of this tax, and giving us for everyone transparency and accuracy of the strategy that we are doing by now. So the purpose of this morning is to give you a little bit more information about the carbon ecosystem as a very important tool and a complete ecosystem in which we can work together with NGOs, with companies, technological companies, and also with the companies like Siemens that are being part of the emissions in Querétaro, and by this way they can support their strategies and also compensate their emissions. After that, in a win-win process, all of us can have this spectacular, this wonderful strategy and mechanism in order to decarbonize an economy in a region that can be replicated, replied in other parts of the world, or also increase to be part of many other companies that want or have the interest to compensate their emissions, for instance, in Sierra Leone. Welcome everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. And Ricardo brought also a video for us. And it will start now.
So this model, this Sello Querétaro, this protocol that we have in Sierra Gorda, it's a model not just for Querétaro but for other states and regions in the world.
To keep those worlds protected, corporate and landowners.
Where governments, local owners, NGOs can be part of a big strategy.
The standardization of the carbon footprint is really important in order to take the right action to decarbonize the supply chain. It's important because what we can measure, we can improve.
For the carbon ecosystem, the government of Querétaro selected like 50 projects. Most of them are nature-based, and the most prominent obviously is the project of the Grupo Ecológico Sierra Gorda. And most of the projects have a community impact as well as carbon and biodiversity impact.
We are the very end of this end-to-end product. We are with a feet on the ground.
So you're paying carbon here, you have certain species. You go into a cloud forest, you have a different level of species. And that's why we're taking care of the health of the jaguar, the puma, the lynxes, the bobcats around here. So we are fighting climate change, improving the local economy, and slowing down the 6th extinction wave.
El monitoreo del proyecto Carbono Biodiverso Sierra Gorda se lleva a cabo a través de recorridos de vigilancia y del establecimiento de parcelas de muestreo permanentes. En estas parcelas revisamos el incremento de la vegetación de los árboles adultos. Adicional a esto, los monitoreos a través de recorridos de vigilancia nos permiten observar la regeneración, observar si hay degradación y continuar con los pagos a los dueños de los bosques de los predios forestales.
So we're trying to develop a local strategy protected by the government, in which the great beneficiaries are the local owners of the forest in Querétaro.
The sky's the limit. We want more stakeholders to collaborate with us and to learn about the benefits that Sello Querétaro, the protocol of Sierra Gorda, it's bringing to our environment.
Get in touch with Querétaro. We are happy to help everybody who wants to be part of this decarbonization strategy.
So let me come back. What a great video. Thank you to give a glimpse what it is all about. So the agenda for today, we start with the next point. It's setting the stage for mobilizing external funding through the carbon ecosystem with our partner Cadirius. Then Gunther is coming and giving you an overview of the comprehensive carbon ecosystem, deeper insights. Then we will have a panel discussion about local decarbonization strategy, scalable success story for global impact. And afterwards, we have time for Q&A. So please prepare yourself for your questions, and we will answer them later on. Now on stage, Ibrahim Adadzadeh. We start with him, and he is our project partner, not only here with a comprehensive carbon ecosystem. Cadirius is also part of Estanium. So,
you hear me? Yeah, works. All right, thank you, Verena. Hold on. Thank you for having us with our partners, Estanium, Querétaro, Siemens, Open Forest, a lot of people to mention. Today I would like to discuss one of the main problems why we are facing a huge funding gap in the nature-based solutions. Most of you probably know the chart on the left-hand side. We are facing a massive supply-demand in equivalents going towards 2030 until 2050. The market is not only short by billions, the market is short by trillions. And there are a lot of problems why the market is not functioning and why the finance transition is not happening. For us, one main reason is the all right. The voluntary carbon market is is a mechanism after the Kyoto Protocol for the finance transition into everything which is climate solutions. Unfortunately, the voluntary carbon market is not working right now. And there are many reasons for that. And 4 of them we have highlighted here. Firstly, there is no quality check and there is no quality assessment, or was not. It is not really accessible for many people. It is unregulated and it is intransparent. So the overall market itself, and we started at Delirious, and by the way, we have banking background, so it is not a market as we would define a market from a financial markets point of view. And hence, companies are not really willing and also not able to really go into the voluntary carbon market and invest in projects as they need it for their net zero targets in 2030, 40, and onwards. What we have built at Delirious is a risk mitigation tool where we want to help the corporates with the enterprise solution to mitigate the risk in order to avoid reputational and greenwashing risk. And we are not doing it on our own. So on purpose, we think that the whole value chain needs to be basically filtered through so that you avoid conflicts of interest. And that's why we have concentrated our work in a carbon management tool, which I will show you, where we are trying to mitigate the project risks by an independent due diligence, by continuous monitoring, for example, with our friends at Open for Us through Explorer Land, where we put a portfolio together and we do all the procurement and contracting, but also help marketing with the communication. On purpose, we are not project developers. On purpose, we think that project developers should only do the projects, and there should be other resources who basically do a independent due diligence. We also look at the regulatory and legal risk. We have more than 6 million data now in our database, where we really go through a lot of layers. We start with a country assessment, project assessment, and program assessment, but also market risk. For example, reputational risk. What is the public sentiment? How is the political landscape changing? That's everything we do in our carbon management tool so that we can minimize the reputation and greenwashing risk for the corporates who are interested to go the long way through avoidance, reduction, and neutralization. The carbon management tool is a tool where corporates can basically manage their historical, present, but also future carbon credits. We are focusing on nature-based solutions only because we believe that the market will immediately or soon only go into removal projects rather than reduction and avoidance projects. The 4 verticals we are working with are forest, reg ag, oceans, and peatlands, and derivatives out of that, which would be biochar and enhanced rock weathering. The management tool gives you the opportunity to secure supply now for your targets, for example, from 30, 40 onwards, and also lock in a price. Because we've seen in the first chart that as demand is overshooting supply, there is a big chance that prices will go higher, especially for high quality, high impact carbon removal projects. Now, how do we get the money into the system? We have structured a fund which is regulated under the German financial watchdog BaFin. It is a closed-end alternative investment fund where corporates and institutionals can basically deliver their climate responsibility through the fund, where we, as the managers of the fund, with our carbon management tool, will provide a portfolio, and with that portfolio, every corporate can invest in climate solutions early on, so they have a skin in the game from the very beginning, and through their pro rata allocation, they will get their carbon credits and have locked in a price. Why is the ecosystem important? Querétaro is a front runner here. Why? Because one element of having a willingness to invest into the system is a reference price. Every institutional investor wants to have a reference price. And Ricardo just mentioned there is a reference price in Querétaro. It is around about 35 US dollars. We are talking about 600,000 CO2 tons, which would be eligible for neutralization. And with Siemens SideGreen technology and us embedded into that technology, but also the monitoring via ExplorerLand, you have a ecosystem which is closed so that the government, through technology, but also monitoring with a register, can exactly see what is going on in their ecosystem in Querétaro, and there is money to be invested into mainly local projects, which will be obviously beneficiary for the state of Querétaro, but also in high impact, high quality carbon removal projects, not only in Mexico, but even outside Mexico. And this is only the beginning. Querétaro, as I mentioned, is around about 16 million US dollars only. It will grow, hopefully. And we have already seen other states coming our way, especially towards Gunta, who are actually willing to get into this system as a blueprint to show that this system is working, that money is flowing into the ecosystem, and also stays in the ecosystem where it's needed. We have already, as I said, other states in Mexico, but all the other nations have already approached and want to see if the ecosystem is working. Our product is almost there, actually it's there, it should work, and we are very happy that we are part of this ecosystem. It is the first of this kind worldwide, so that you have an end-to-end carbon ecosystem where you have a legal framework, you have technology embedded, you have transparency through registry, and you have the political willingness to do something for the future of this planet. Thank you very much.
You need your microphone.
All right, okay, sorry.
You need your microphone. So thank you very much to give us an overview for this important topic. Let's move on. Next point on our agenda is Dr. Gunther Beitinger. He's chairman of the Estanium Association and founder of SideGreen. Please welcome Gunther.
Thank you, Valena. Thank you for your attention, and thank you very much also Ricardo and Evi that you gave already a good insight of the carbon ecosystem. First of all, I would like also, now let me put this away now. Okay. So, yeah, let me first introduce a little bit what is Estanium, because we had it several times. Estanium is a non-profit, non-governmental association. And of course, we envision a carbon-free supply chain or let's say we really would like that we track and trace the carbon from the moment when it is, let's say, released to the atmosphere till to the end when it is taken out of the atmosphere for good. And the Athenium Association, like it is said here, is driving the industrial decarbonization holistically. And of course, we are supporting industries, small, medium companies on their way. And I have seen only if we do this together, if we join with academia, with governments, with other key role player, if we would really would like to have an impact. Of course, we have several topics what we need to address. First of all, we need an exchange network so that we can exchange information in a very trustful but also trustworthy way. For this, we need an infrastructure. Then, of course, we need to make sure that all the information which is shared is comparable, is aggregable, and of course follows a rule book. And then, finally, of course, then you need to provide this information in a full transparency way. And we're doing this already with 29 members all over the world. So we have companies in our association from Australia, from Japan, from other parts of Europe, then Germany, from Switzerland. And all of them have really an interest to make this vision true. So come a little bit to the carbon ecosystem. As I said, it takes several players. In this case, of course, it takes a government who takes action, who gives also, let's say, a framework a company can rely on, taking out all of the speculations, so setting a price, for example. And also, then you need carbon registry and an offset marketplace if you really would like to close the loop. Otherwise, you're just ending up in the middle of your way. So it needs accuracy of the emission data. We need to allow standardized data input for the certification and verification of the information. The transparency. Without transparency, of course, there is no trust. And last but not least, and that's very important, and this is also shown in the carbon ecosystem, it needs integration in business operations, in the carbon accounting, and in governmental and local regulatory systems, so that it becomes not only an, let's say, issue that you comply with regulatory compliance, that it is inbuilt in your strategy, but also that it is integrated in your daily business processes. And as it was mentioned also from Ricardo and Evi, Seagreen is a core tool in this case. Seagreen has several, let's say, levels. I always speak from a T model. So when you're looking into the supply chain, of course, you're facing the challenge when you are collecting data from your suppliers that you can, of course, approach them and the way this information gets shared. So first of all, Seagreen allows you to request data from your suppliers. So for example, hey, you're providing me this component. I would like to know how much emissions are related to this because I want to build it into my product carbon footprint. Then, of course, then you request it by a certain rule book because unfortunately different industries have different standards and rule books, and then you need to define what is the rule book. This is calculated and aggregated. Otherwise, you are comparing apples with peaches or whatever. Then, when you have then the information, you would like to share it in the same trustful and trustworthy way with your customers. And of course, if you would like to, you can certify this information. And now, the last element, what is seen here, now we have closed. Now, if a company wants to compensate at least also a part of the let's say, avoidable or reducible emissions, then there is the possibility to buy high impact carbon offsets directly due to this platform. And everything is possible due to these connect options. The connect options allows a direct integration via standardized interfaces to exchange information seamless. And of course, when it is seamless, then it's very difficult to manipulate. So, to give you a dimension how much progress we already made with Seagreen, when we would count all the emissions of the companies who are registered already on Seagreen, we would be, it's good because it's between Mexico and Brazil now, if Seagreen would be a country. So that you have already an idea how many companies already here using Seagreen for managing their carbon journey along the supply chain. And the companies from all over the world, because this is a global objective. And also supply chains are globally connected. You have seen this already in the video of Ricardo, so how the comprehensive carbon ecosystem works. And if you are interested, also Martin is here, Martin is in the back, you can rest, yeah. He is the masterhead behind these programming and setting up this. He is here if you have further questions and you would like to look into the system, how it works, and then you can play a little bit around. So now, when we start now, something happened. Yeah, yeah. Then we have the video here. I think it just started, and then I think the sound is. Then you have a short idea. So if you have already your emissions calculated, and so you are done from a company point of view, you can log into the Seagreen Carbon ecosystem and you put in your company information, you make all the registration. Of course, you need to give in the factory you would like to be reported. If you would like, of course, if you have a plant network, if you have several factories in the state of Querétaro, you can register all at once. And then, via the API, which is the standard interface, you can load up the information and you can start the reporting. If you are not, you want to use the API, of course, there's always the option to manually load up the information and the data. And then you submit and send the data to the Cerezo portal, and then you go into and start to collect a company and then the project you would like to have. If you have selected the projects, of course, you have then, in this case, we are selecting 2. So if you have selected the projects, of course, you have to allocate the carbon emission you would like to get compensated by each of these projects, and you see that before there was this the compensation which were eligible for the emissions which were eligible for compensation, and then you buy them and you get a certification or say you're back, and then it's valid for the tax reduction. So I know this was a little bit fast, but don't worry, we have it here still on our computer. And to sum it up, for us, the common ecosystem combines so many benefits. First of all, you have really an end-to-end journey. The emissions starts at your company and you can track and trace seamlessly. So if you have avoided, reduced them, or you have compensated them. Then for a company who has to manage them, of course, there is a lot of benefit because it lowers the efforts, and also everything is provable, and so no leakage, for example, can be done. It gives the opportunity for the state of Querétaro that they offer companies who are operating in Querétaro that they have access to really high impact and high quality offsetting so which is for their company pledge, especially when we are talking about companies normally have already a target in reducing their emissions, then they have really access to these high quality and high impact compensations, which then they in return can communicate and let's say can prove that they are responsible and take up their responsibility in regards of sustainable operations. So I sum it up with it. I hope maybe that later you will visit us and look at it when we are making a live demonstration, and then giving that to Helene. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the insights. So, coming to the next agenda point, I would like to invite some people on stage. So, let's start with Ricardo. Please come on stage. Then Laura Perez Arque from Grupo Ecologico Sierra Gorda. Ana Ortiz from Apala Group. And Alexander Watson from Open Forest. So I guess we don't have other microphones, so we need to share this one.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. I'm gonna take this. Yeah. Now it's working. Now it's working, I guess. Perfect. So we got so many insights already, but I thought I invite you to talk about the local decarbonization strategy and the blueprint we are planning here. So let's start with you, Ricardo. Could you tell us what legal setting is enabling the comprehensive carbon ecosystem in Querétaro?
Yeah, well, as I said before, we started a strategy in the early months of 2022, where we established a way to finance our decarbonization pathways. We have been working on the diagnosis and many inventories of the carbon emissions in our state. We have been prepared also a energy balance, and knowing very well all the companies in the state of Querétaro in which of them are producing CO2 for many years, since 28 and the next 10 years. We have been visiting all those companies and reviewing their process and also knowing about the emissions. So after that, we designed our baseline and determine the kind of projects that we have to develop in order to decarbonize of our economy. And the first question is, who's gonna pay? Who's gonna pay for decarbonization? Because the implementation of our decarbonization paths requires around $400 million at total. And who's gonna pay? The government doesn't have enough money to finance directly the decarbonization. In Mexico, we don't have super funds, so we need to look at the emitters, the sources that are generating CO2 in the state of Querétaro, and we designed this tax. With this tax in progress, as I said before, I met Dr. Gunther a year ago, and then we signed an MOU in order to use their technology with our documents and with our own technology in the state. By the way, we have been working with Grupo for many years in order to pay environmental services for the local owners in the state of Querétaro. At the very beginning, with public money, but many parts of the Sierra Gorda weren't part of this initiative because the government doesn't have enough money to pay to everyone. So with the tax, we started with the possibility, also with Grupo Ecológico, to certificate their emissions and giving them the opportunity to be part of this tax compensation system in the state of Querétaro. Grupo were working with Open Forest in order to develop this strategy, this technology in the field, which we then calculate the absorptions, and that's the way in which we started the development of the carbon ecosystem. On then we are joining all the efforts coming from the NGO, the civil society, the company's interest on the carbonization, the government interest on the applying of the decarbonization pathways, and also the necessity to have many different projects in which the companies can save money because they have the option to pay the tax at $34 per ton, or they have the option to compensate their emissions. By this way, they can save money and they can save the planet also.
That leads me to my next question. Perfect. So talking about the benefits of such a system for local communities.
Yeah, that's very important because we started with of course the companies need to have the better price for them because we're at the very beginning we were the only one state in Mexico doing that, and with this aggressive tax. Now Tamaulipas is helping us with the discussion at a national level. But many of our companies say that their competitors installed in other states in Mexico have different conditions, and the companies installed in Querétaro say that they are in resting competitiveness of the businesses because their competitor doesn't have to pay this tax. So on that way we have to offer many different projects in which they can save us the most money that they can. But we have priorities, and we have developing the Sello Querétaro with the priority of Querétaro and especially Sierra Gorda. So they have to at least use 17% of the compensations should be part of the Sierra Gorda projects, and the other 83% they can choose another kind of different projects in the state, all depending on the opportunities and the people in Sierra Gorda that can be part of the initiative. So by this way, directly, the company, the private sector are paying environmental services to the people, not through the state. We only make the rules, we only make the ecosystem, with laws, with normativity, with our local ordinance, in which we can send the opportunity to Sierra Gorda, but we do not touch the money. The government does not touch the money. The money flows directly from the companies to the local owners. In this way, they have the opportunity to get the biggest slice of the cake. In difference with other kind of products or other kind of solutions, they have at least 80% of the money coming from the compensation system are for the local owners of the forest in the state of Querétaro. And we don't sell future, we do not accept carbon credits in the state of Querétaro. We only sell the reductions and the absorptions make it in the last year, and if the price go up, the local owners can be the beneficiaries of this new price. But also if the market moves down, they also have to appreciate that this is a market, a carbon market, and they have. But in the last 2 years, the prices are going on and are going on and are going up. So they can have a better conditions for their properties, and the companies have also the security that they are buying certain carbon, not speculations in the future, only carbon absorbed that is already in the forest, and that's great because they have the opportunity to use this carbon compensation in order to compensate and to follow their own strategies and decarbonization paths inside the corporations.
Thank you. And in this blueprint, we are only talking about Querétaro and Sierra Gorda. But what do you think? How can this system be scaled into other parts of Mexico?
Yeah, it's a possibility where other governments have same initiatives like us, like for instance Argentina. Hello to Pablo this morning, who is coming from Argentina to know about this carbon ecosystem, or also Tamaulipas, where the governments has the necessity to develop this kind of ecosystems in which they want to decarbonize their economies, and also reply that other NGOs in the territory in touch with the local owners, with the local communities, where the people are able to develop a strategy like this, using Querétaro protocol or applying or this kind of strategies in their own territories, where the people are in the center of the decisions, where the people from the companies, the people from the territories, the people from the forest could be a central part of these strategies. It could be replied, of course, and it could be, and then of course they can use the platform that we have developed over the last months, in which in all the time that we have been put it into this ecosystem, is available for everybody who wants to develop a system like this and make it possible in a joint venture with the governments and the local NGOs and the local people owning the forest.
Thank you, Ricardo. Before I move on with Laura, I guess you brought a short video
Yes.
for us, right?
Yes.
Should we have a look?
Yes, would we? I think we can move so that people can see.
Yeah.
it.
Nice, isn't it? So, let's start.
Con esta situación actual de nuestro planeta, es difícil mantenerse entusiasta, pero tengo mucha fe y mucho entusiasmo porque creo que en estos momentos de crisis tan cerrados es cuando los mejores seres humanos pueden emerger.
¿Por qué hemos perdido bosques y selvas? Porque no había otras opciones productivas. Aterrizamos los protocolos internacionales inoperantes y burocráticos que diseñó alguien en Nueva York, o Washington o en Londres, que no tiene idea cómo funcionan las cosas aquí.
¿Cómo poder generar incentivos económicos a los dueños de los bosques y que les sea redituable, que a ellos les sea más benéfico dejar su bosque a conservación y simplemente dedicarse a vigilar su predio?
Con esta situación actual de nuestro planeta, es difícil mantenerse entusiasta, pero tengo mucha fe y mucho entusiasmo porque creo que en estos momentos de crisis tan cerrados es cuando los mejores seres humanos pueden emerger.
¿Por qué hemos perdido bosques y selvas? Porque no había otras opciones productivas. Aterrizamos los protocolos internacionales inoperantes y burocráticos que diseñó alguien en Nueva York, o Washington o en Londres, que no tiene idea cómo funcionan las cosas aquí.
¿Cómo poder generar incentivos económicos a los dueños de los bosques y que les sea redituable, que a ellos les sea más benéfico dejar su bosque a conservación y simplemente dedicarse a vigilar su predio?
Entonces hace años que nos metimos a hacer los estudios, la línea de base de cuánto carbono está almacenado en una hectárea de un bosque de robles, de encinos aquí en la Sierra Gorda, y cuánto carbono se captura a partir del retiro del ganado.
El proyecto Carbono Biodiverso en la Reserva de la Biosfera Sierra Gorda busca cuantificar económicamente el servicio ambiental que brinda un bosque a través de la captura de carbono. Es por eso que llevamos a cabo un protocolo local en el que medimos, en el que estimamos la captura de carbono que se da en los diferentes ecosistemas que se encuentran en la Sierra Gorda, para poder estimar, para poder calcular cuántas toneladas de CO2 existen almacenadas en los predios y cuánto se está capturando anualmente, con el objetivo de que esta valorización económica permita tener ingresos a los dueños de la tierra, a los propietarios de los bosques.
Entonces, al tener una opción para la gente, teniendo el carbono como base, que les dé dinero para atrás, y la condición de sacar las vacas,
pues se hizo el primer pago a propietarios forestales de la Sierra Gorda, gracias a que la industria en el estado de Querétaro ahora por ley tiene que compensar sus emisiones de carbono.
Una vez que se ingresan estos predios a esquemas de protección, de conservación a través de pago por servicios ambientales, empieza la maravilla, empieza el milagro de la regeneración.
Para nosotros ha sido un logro mayor el ir conciliando la actividad humana, las demandas sociales de crecimiento económico, con la conservación de la biodiversidad.
Soluciones locales, de abajo hacia arriba, reales. En eso creo y eso me da entusiasmo.
So please come back. What a nice video. Really good, very impressive. I like it. You can also use this microphone if it's better for you now. Yeah, you have to press the green button and then, yeah. Wonderful. So, Laura, Grupo Ecologico Sierra Gorda is the first organization using the local protocol so far. So what's your experience with implementing it?
Well, let me give you a little background. Grupo Ecologico Sierra Gorda has been founded in 1987, so it's an organization that has been operating in the northern part of the state of Querétaro for 37 years. And we have been really an organization that is working in order to find alternatives for the people who own the land within this region. So we're speaking, by the way, this map is from Explorer Land. So we are speaking about a region that is really quite far away from any major city. We're about 400 curves, 3 hours away from the capital city of the state. We have 638 communities that are here, 120,000 people. And 70% is private property, 27% is ejido, 3% is the federal land of the Biosphere Reserve. So we have to find conservation as a solution, as a benefit for those property owners. And how can we do that? Well, first of all, we have to gain their trust. So Grupo Ecologico has been dedicated to many different activities throughout the years, primarily environmental education. And our founder, who you saw in the video, was originally a music teacher. And so the songs of ecology really were something that here in Mexico we don't sing. This is something where when everybody learns a song and we get together and sing the songs, we come into alpha. And that means that we can really bring home the messages about what are those values that we have within our region. We have fresh air, we have water, we have these amazing ecosystems that it is the most ecosystem diverse federal protected area within Mexico. And if the landowners don't have a value for that ecosystem, then it will be burned in order to change the land use, in order to have more cattle. It will have logging or poaching or other encroachments and other degradation. And so we have been working for these last 25 years, we can go to the next slide, in a series of different activities in order to be able to involve and have that widespread participation. And so we have environmental education, we have water capture, working with beekeepers, having micro-enterprise networks throughout the region, having a capacity building, and obviously the firefighting brigades. We have a semi-desert, as I was saying, with very ecosystem diverse, so semi-desert with some amazing oregano. I wish I had our oregano products with us. And working in vegetable gardens, doing composting and making sure that all of the recycling, more than 100 recycling centers throughout the region to remove all of those solid wastes so that they don't reach the landfills where we are. And all of this environmental education isn't just for the schools. When you're working in a school, obviously you're working also with the teachers and with the parents. And throughout those 37 years, it means you're basically reaching the whole population, because you'll have every different kind of part of that family. So when we approach the people of the Sierra Gorda to say that we do have a value here, and it's called carbon. And this carbon is something that we can actually take to a voluntary market. Now, the voluntary market, the regulated market, would exclude the Sierra Gorda. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to show you just a timeline of how the Sierra Gorda has developed this local protocol. So Sierra Gorda, the Grupo Ecológico, is actually part of the joint implementation through Wood Rising Inc. from Canada. We were doing reforestations, over 6 million trees were planted, and we were able to actually begin to sell carbon in 2005, what we called premium carbon at the time, to our first customer being the United Nations Foundation. And the organization realized that we needed to be able to have a validation. And so we worked with the CCB and VCS, and here is my colleague, David Ross, who we worked for 3 years in order to have all of the paperwork necessary to have originally, how many people were on our list to be validated? It was something like 470 different landowners. And the standards at the time did not have the possibility, the methodologies to include all of those landowners. And so only about 147 were included in this validation process. Well, all of those people that were excluded, well, we were hitting the same brick wall. So we took a step back, and in 2013-14, the pine bark beetle arrived to the Sierra Gorda, and it was devastating. And we had already been working with the Savory Institute and various other institutions to do soil regeneration, and realized that we had the ways to be able to give a yes to every no within the regulated market. So we started to look at how we can have our most potential through biodiversity carbon, carbono biodiversity. And this is where we have now been, we were chosen by the UNEP in order to be able to apply the 5 guidelines of the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency within the UNFCCC, which is a system basically to show the transparency of public policy at a government level. And so the ICAT is established within the methodology of the protocol at a state level. It's recognized as one of those standards. I'll step down just as everyone else does. And with the Ministry of Environment, as well as the state government, we're able to have registered within the NAMA registry a project. And this is the foundation for our local protocol. Now being registered within the UNFCCC, being able to have the framework for the state to begin to develop this policy, And the policy now is the sello carbono. So if we go to the next slide. So here we are, really a group of passionate people in an area that is so beautiful, it's so magical. I hope that you all will come to Sierra Gorda to see how this region is and how the people appreciate and have a very strong connection to their land. And if we have these alternatives, then just from 2020 to 2024, this is the number of tons of carbon within all of the properties that are within our system. And this is quite a large project. So we were working just sort of within Excel for a very long time and sort of reaching the limits of that. And when we met Open Forests, it was actually 3 years ago that we started to talk about how can we convert this local data into a viable software in order for not only us to operate, but be able to think about how others would be able to adopt the same protocol and be able to apply it where they are. So I point out specifically, this is Papi Ruiz Corso's husband, who is a walking geospatial map. When we have all of these different properties across the landscape, he is a native son of Sierra Gorda. And before he even walked, his father strapped him into a mule and would take him out through the Sierra Gorda. Well, every property owner knows Don Beto. And so it is vital that we have this information and these local relationships directly with everybody. And his son, who was home educated, is a naturalist, a nature photographer of National Geographic, and has been able to document as well as have various species of magnolia named after them. And we have our local landowners who have these amazing property, and I mean to say the value of our natural patrimony. These are the elements of at least trying to slow down the sixth extinction. I'm here for the forest. I'm here for the mountains. I'm here to say that nature is in this room. We are all nature. So let's think about how can we move quickly in order to be able to have solutions. And solutions are not technology. Solutions are on the ground. It's boots on the ground. The technology is a tool in the toolbox. So why did I start with environmental education? Because we all need to be educated. And we need to have all of the different systems. Carbon is a small piece of this puzzle. Okay? So I invite you to be able to understand that this local protocol is something that we have developed in order for other NGOs to have a framework. It requires that the NGO that adopts it have at least 5 years operating where they are so that they have the network, so that they have those local relationships. It requires that those areas have a 1-year contract with each of the property owners and be able to have various different obligations. One of them is to remove the cattle. Other is to be able to have the monitoring in that area and by our team as well as them themselves as rangers, that they participate in the firefighting brigades and it's a long period because now we are in these amazing, exceptional droughts. Sierra Gorda is an exceptional drought region. And so we need to be able to have the monitoring throughout the year. And if we find a cow patty, that's strike one. If we find a cow patty the second time, you're off the list. And we let the word spread around and people, that word of mouth is so important in a rural area. And what's happening with that word of mouth? Other landowners are approaching Don Beto and saying, I would like to be able to participate in this project. And that means a great deal of potential, hopefully to reach those 600,000 tons. That is the demand for this compensation program within the carbon tax. So I believe this is the last slide, one more. So these are our different clients that we have had in this last year. Tourism is one of the areas that doesn't have a specific obligation. And we have been continually approached by different hotels, and this is a specific hotel chain that has about 3 years that they have been offsetting with us. In the voluntary space, Paruno, and through Apollo Group, Uber, has been also making its compensation commitment. And through the Sello Carbono, the Sello Querétaro, These are 3 of about 23 companies, I believe, that have joined with this project. So I welcome any of your questions. David and I will be here, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a journey. Great work. Congratulations. And in the end, it pays off, as you can see. You mentioned the local protocol again. And Anna, perhaps for you, why is the local protocol so interesting for Uber Planet, your client?
Thank you, Laura. It's a bit difficult to follow on your steps after this amazing presentation, so I'll do my best. So just to back up a little bit, the Uber participation in this program is actually a specific product of Uber Mexico specifically, and it's through a product called Uber Planet that I would just like to briefly explain. Uber Planet is a solution and an offering for Uber users to be able to voluntarily choose to pay a little bit extra to support impact programs. And we are very, very clear about not putting take a neutral ride or be carbon neutral in your next Uber ride. Because one, we don't only support carbon projects, we work in a more of a holistic approach. And two, just because you're deciding to take this type of Uber ride doesn't necessarily mean you're carbon neutral. So I think that's really important to be completely transparent. And the reason why we've made the decision this year to support Carbono Biodiverso, which by the way, to me, the name Carbono Biodiverso was one of the reasons I approached them, was because they do not only have this tunnel vision of carbon, you know? From the start, you're already opening the doors to biodiversity and the fact that it's a whole symbiotic chain of different aspects of an ecosystem that need to be taken into account. And it did take us a bit of a while to be able to convince Uber representatives to work with a local protocol. Why? Because people are not used to it, you know? And behind a company like Uber are people. So you need to convince people. And it took us a little bit of a while because we're used to these international standards which make an executive's job easier, especially when you're talking about a global sustainability strategy. But in the sense of Uber Planet itself in Mexico, for us, it just made so much sense. You know, it's a program by the people and for the people. You know, I'm an Uber Planet user. I've known a lot of people that use them. And I think it's in the best interest of the public to make sure they're supporting the best projects out there. And we really take that very seriously. And we do a lot of due diligence of projects. And we found a lot of unreputable projects in the Mexican market. And that's why we were open to evaluating new types of products and new types of projects. So I think the local protocol for us is a way to be able to approach a local solution that has different aspects of being close to the people through Grupo Ecológico Sierra Gorda, having the structure through the government of Querétaro, having the technology through open forests, and it just made it very reputable, trustworthy, and to say the least, it's a Mexican project, you know, and we want to be able to bring that.
So I can skip my next question because you answered it already. So what's the difference compared to other carbon credit schemes? So I guess you answered it already. Thank you.
And I'd just like to mention, when we were at the Mexican Carbon Forum, David took Uber and he used Uber Planet.
Okay.
Great. I think just to add, one of the differences is we're not looking to acquire these certificates for a market reason to then go out and trade them, and this protocol is really just ensuring that the emissions that are created through this program are being compensated in a way, but not with the intention of going out and making more money, but to just support a natural project within the boundaries of Querétaro.
Thank you. And you have invested significantly into it. What has built the trust?
Well, Laura has been one of the main reasons.
People business.
Yeah, people. I think that's one of the reasons that Grupo Ecológico Sierra Gorda has been working with these communities for 37 years. So it's hard to beat that, to be honest. It's hard to see a project that has been with a project for so long. Other than that, the fact that this project does not have this developer entity, I wish I could say, that we have in the last years seen very bad examples of. I don't want to say all of them, but we have seen a few. And also the fact that they're so open to visits. A lot of projects are actually really avoiding visits, and one of the things we do at Apollo Group is we do yearly visits and sometimes quarterly visits. So that just kind of shows the lack of transparency in other projects that here there's like completely no worry about. And in our last visit in August, was it? Yes. It just built so much trust that we were like, okay, we're going to be continuing with these acquisitions. We're now moving on to the second one, and we're increasing our participation. And not only that, we're making it public. So actually today, we are having a press release about the Uber Mexico commitment to the program. And I think being able to interview landowners directly, being able to talk to Patti, to Laura, and to see all of the players, to talk to the government of Querétaro and see their participation, just builds trust, because it's not only about having international standards, it's about comprehending that governing authorities are okay with this project because they are in the interest of having their people happy and making sure things are done ethically. And I think that's why we just have built so much trust around the project.
Thank you so much, Anna. I can feel that you are really proud of it. So
I love it. We should all go there next time.
Yeah.
We need to have a Jalpan climate week.
Very good, thank you. Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah, please press.
Keep press?
Keep it press.
As long as speaking. Hello, hello.
No, not okay.
Hello, hello, hello.
Much better. Talking about project registry. Why is it important to have a project registry and a comprehensive monitoring system in place?
Yeah, basically, Gunther Weitinger started with explaining how to register the emissions on the one hand. So we also have to do this on the other side. We also have to register the compensations in the landscape. And this also needs a scientific as well as systematic approach. So let me quickly say how the carbon is really calculated here, because that's also quite innovative. And then you also understand how this registry falls in place. So instead of putting a lot of money into on-the-ground sample plots, there's a lot of research that have been conducted in determining the sequestration rates of different forest types, different ecosystems in the Sierra Gorda. And this helps, so this research has helped to reduce the number of sample plots and still being representative. However, having, let's say, the monitoring on the ground is then additionally complemented with remote sensing data, with satellite timelines, with forest loss data. So very simple but scalable, robust methodologies to confirm that the carbon is really staying in the land. So we also detected areas where there have been illegal logging, not within the parcels, but in the surrounding areas. So we can monitor the threats early and then, apply some actions to prevent them in the future. So that's really, something that makes it very efficient, because some standards require a lot of resources for monitoring, and this is money that cannot go in restoration because it pays consultants, TÜV, SGS, blaming them, but yeah, so the money should go to the people and not into administrating these projects. And in this case, we have now built a really tailored solution that is likewise scalable. So that's really adapted to the local conditions to onboard all the land users, but also that other organizations could potentially reuse the software in a multi-tenant system to apply that to their legislative area. And it works the following, so the carbon that has been measured, that will go into the registry, and inside of the registry, each carbon offset, it's not a credit, it's just a carbon offset, has a unique identifier that really describes which property it comes from, which vintage, a number, and so on. So it's, yeah, it's a standard database thing, but it's not done in all the markets yet. So, and with that, we can then aggregate and build a stock of carbon very systematically. And then if a company comes like Uber or some other companies who want to buy this or who want to offset, then there's a transaction happen, and then the carbon credits are linked to a transaction code, so that basically you can track each carbon credit from which project, at which time it comes, and how it's then compensated with the company. It's a very simple database, but quite efficient. So that's the administration side. So I want to go to the maybe one word for the monitoring, because yeah, I think here the difference is that a lot of standards require monitoring, and then you pay expensive consulting companies, geospatial companies to create relatively or high accuracy data for these projects, but then this information is not disclosed. So they are in silos, or they're brought into a PDF linked to some registry that no one can really access the data. So, and in this case, we have seen the maps several of times. You can go to this place, you can check out the satellite timelines, deforestation. It's not high-end data, but it's public accessible data. It's transparent data, so everyone has access to it. So you can see on a monthly basis, on a satellite image, how the forest is doing. You can see on a weekly basis deforestation. The data is coming from Global Forest Watch. We're just integrating it, but making it public. So it's what you said, Anna, walking into the forest. You can do it basically from everywhere in the world. So you just call up the project on a map, and then you can see what's happening on the ground. And it does not need rocket science. It just needs the, let's say, guts to be full transparent and do good work. Yeah.
I guess that is how you use data to tell an inspiring project story, right?
Yeah. So the one thing is really the technology, but the other thing is really to tell a story not about the project with nice fancy pictures, and we have nice videos also, but it's really to tell the story through the project, through the activities on the ground. And yeah, I believe a map is a very convenient storytelling canvas, because it has the possibility to put a story on top of a map, like within a theater, and you can tell the story in space and time, but at any point you have the possibility to ground truth this story also in data. So it basically combines the data and the story. And on the one hand, the story helps to inspire and carry on the story to other countries, to other states, to replicate the system. And the ground truthing in the data helps to build the trust. So,
thank you, Alexander. So, we've heard the challenges from the government today, how to incentivize local industry to protect environments, benefits for local communities, trust is always the word we use here. Then we also got to know what's important for project developers, and that brings me to my last question to all of you. So Which additional benefit will bring the carbon ecosystem to all involved parties? What do you think?
The local. I wasn't ready yet, but okay. Which additional benefits would the carbon ecosystem bring to all? I think it's like an end-to-end transparent process. And in particular, this type of ecosystem, it's changing the narrative that we all have to adjust to international standards, when in reality, we're talking about local land that belongs to communities that have been selflessly doing this for decades. So we don't need to adjust to contracts from other countries. I think they should adjust to us. And I think this is what this ecosystem does. It enables technology without removing the primary participants of the ecosystem, which are people and species and land and just life itself, I guess.
Absolutely true, that's where I would go. We're talking about inclusivity. We're talking about being able to include those smallholders and to include NGOs in the relationship with governments to have that extensionism that the governments can't have. To be able to really have the monitoring and the involvement on the ground. And to be able to have more biodiversity in the mix. We need to be working quickly across the landscape. We can't be thinking about reforestations because we no longer can count on the rain. We need to be thinking about how to solidify and to fortify and to believe in those ecosystems, even when after this extreme droughts that we've had over the last 2 years, where we can see that there is a little bit of die-off, and we're seeing that across the planet. Are the registries reflecting that die-off? Are they reflecting the change in climate that is happening now? I don't think so. I think we need to be very realistic, and we need to have faith, and we need to have love. Love has to be a part of this equation, and that's working with the local people. So that's where we want to go.
Thank you.
I think in the case of the state of Querétaro, is the possibility to develop small local projects. We're a small state in general in terms of the size of Mexico. Mexico, as Walter said before, has an industry sector that represents about 400 million tons every year. But the case of Querétaro is only 1 million tons every year involved in the carbon ecosystem because of the size of the state, the size of the population, and the economy of the state. Even when we are a very industrialized state in the center of Mexico, we are small. And when we started to develop our compensation system, I very quickly know that if we only take part of the carbon offsets market, the voluntary market, all the compensations coming from the necessities from the local industry should be compensated by international projects, not national and no local projects. So the additionality for us is the possibility to develop local small projects in which the people, the local entrepreneur, the small producer, the small farmer, the small local owner of the forest can be part of an ecosystem in which they can be part of the solution and be part of the decarbonization of our economy.
I want to bring a little analogy. So if you design complex systems and you use a waterfall model, you usually fail. So that's the industry shown. So, and what has happened here, so the ecosystem is the carbon ecosystem is a very complex system. And what we have done here, we have designed a system that's really customer-centric in an agile methodology. So maybe not as you have it in modern software development with sprint teams, but basically we are the teams sitting here together discussing really the needs bottom up. So what do the farmers need? What do Grupo need? What does Apala need? What does the state need? And we bring this together in little working groups efficiently and then building a system bottom up, and this makes it so efficient, and also I think it's also the benefit of the system, because everyone has a saying, and make sure that their component is working, because if one component in an ecosystem is not working, then the entire system fails. So, and I think this is a good example where we designed a complex system in a quite modern management approach.
Very good. Thank you, Alexander. Yes. So, great summary. Thank you so much to be my guest today. And I hope you can stay a little bit, because we are coming now to the Q&A sessions, and therefore I would like to ask Gunther and Evi if they can join the stage. And we are waiting for your questions, and I will come to you with a microphone, and you can address your questions.
You want to take this one? I think. No, please. Yeah.
Yes.
So I have, this is a new thought, and it's perhaps planting a seed. I want to challenge all of us. We have benefited from the carbon tunnel vision that's focused on emissions. And you've created perhaps an excellent, admirable model ecosystem that is looking at a way to tap those dollars to invest in supporting the local initiatives. And I think you are best positioned in the world to perhaps expand the focus away from carbon to look at biodiversity, to look at cooling, to look at water cycles. I think in the coming years, maybe less than a decade, we're seeing the failure of the emissions focus only to solve the global heating problem. And I think we need to maybe add to your model a way to also measure what kind of cooling function is being provided. So any thoughts on that? As I said, I'm just trying to plant a seed. I know it's complicated. You've achieved a huge milestone here, so thank you.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Philip Bogdanov, President of the Board of Biodiversity for a Livable Climate.
Yeah, so I think measuring the cooling is really a smart way to have like an integrated indicator, because it has shown that intact ecosystems are always cooler than non-intact ecosystems. So there's already data available, so satellite-based measurement data to measure the cool effect of forests, and yeah, so certainly good path to go. No?
I think it's vital. It's something that obviously we are very aware of, and we want to be able to demonstrate all of the values that those ecosystems have and make them tangible to the landowners as well as to those that are benefiting from the services provided by those ecosystems. So that seed has found fertile ground.
I second that. I also think it's vital, and I think we've known about information such as like the planetary boundaries, water, biodiversity, land use change. We have all of this information. We know the symbiotic relationship between all of them, and I think it's just about taking all of the steps in the equation and doing comprehensive solutions instead of just tunnel vision ones, which have benefited us. I don't want to say, I think it is a step in the right direction, but it's time to improve that a lot. We have to step up. We can do better, a lot better.
Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Thank you. My name is Willem Perweda. I'm founder of Commonlands, one of the partners of Sierra Gorda. And first of all, I would love to thank you all for this wonderful presentation. This is really very, very important. My question is more about, we see this as an enabling part of what we call the emerging holistic landscape or ecosystem restoration industry. And that is a thing where we all need to participate in. But this is not only about technical stuff, as I think Laura pointed out. It is also about inspiring and bringing back home. And that has to do with building trust and long-term commitment. So my question is, how do you see long-term commitment here from a government perspective, and from a technical perspective, and from a business perspective? And when we talk long-term, we talk about decades, not about another project.
Well, in the perspective of the government, we think in a long-term vision when we want to include the local owners and the local people, when the citizens are invited to the decarbonization strategy and having an important part of them, is the way in which we want to develop this strategy. Because another way we can develop laws, strategies, policies, but we know when an administration ends, the next one can have a different opinion and can think in a different way. But when the people is involved in the defense of a protocol, of a strategy, is the way in which we think we can defend this kind of strategies, this vision for the people. If we only decide to develop policies and laws, it's very, very it exists the possibility to change over the time. But when the farmers, when the people doing regenerative livestock, when the people of the forest, when the enterprises has the opportunity and understand the value of a protocol, they are going to defend over a new overviews from the future governments or from the future policies that want to be allocated in the state of Querétaro. And that's the way in which we are working, trying to involve in making all the citizens and all the people from Querétaro part of this strategy.
Some additional comments from anyone? Thank you for your question. So I think in the terms of business and building long-term commitment, it all goes back a little bit to how we mentioned about educating businesses and not doing things just for the love of regulation, because regulation is pretty limited, especially in a country like Mexico. But in our experience, involving all stakeholders of a company, the public policy team, the operations team, the marketing team, the communications team, is what's really evolving their commitment to these type of projects. And I think it all starts with educating the importance of this and their involvement in them. Yes.
Hi everybody, good morning. Thank you for the invitation first, Ricardo and the organizers of this event. I'm Pablo from Córdoba. Córdoba is a subnational state in Argentina. I'm the Secretary of Energy Transition of the government of the province. I want to congratulate you because this is like a fine-tuned orchestra of many difficult things working together. Being in the public side of this, I think kind of dimension how hard are the different things that you have achieved in each of those pieces of the puzzle that has to ensemble for this to work. As I am speaking right now, Córdoba is suffering wildfires, very severe. We are already lost 70,000 hectares of forest, and the summer just began. So it is very important for us this type of projects to try to not only protect and regenerate, but also prevent these type of things. my position is more in the energy part, but we are working very, very closely with the Ministry of Environment and Circular Economy, who has the same objective, try to promote not only the carbon side of these discussions, but also the biodiversity. And I have a few questions. I'm sure we are going to keep in touch later, that we can go deeper, but just at least maybe like the surface, the first thought that you may have about this, and we can maybe get deeper in a specific conversation. First, I would like to know, I was seeing the timeline of the protocol, and it was a long timeline. Maybe it would be interesting to know if you think that we can leapfrog some of those hard lessons that you have to learn, and maybe shorten that race we have to do, and where do you think, at least in a short, brief comment, we could gain efficiencies in all that process? And if I may say one more, or that's one. The second one is, from my competence in the energy sector, we are also working with methane, trying to promote biodigesters. Gorda has a very agriculture sector developed, so I think it will be interesting not only from the capture of the methane, but also from the injection of the energy. So I think one of the questions is if you think, I know you are not doing that, if this could be adapted to projects of that type. That's the second, maybe for Alex. And the third one and last is, Ricardo, we have a conversation at some point, but do you think that, I know it's a key ingredient, the carbon tax, but do you think that we could maybe design something more similar to this, but without having to wait to put in place a carbon tax, and maybe working with the taxes that already exist in Córdoba, so we don't have to waste all that process, and we can start doing a pilot of something like this? Sorry if that was too much, but those three things, just for listening your thoughts. Thank you.
So I'm actually going to come back to Willem as well, because I think that it's very important, the fact that the NGOs on the ground that are those players that are working directly with the local landowners are really critical. That's what's going to allow this to be long-term, because as Ricardo said, the governments are going to change, but the NGOs and the local people are going to continue to be there. So I think that's really critical. So my response to your first question is come to Skidmore. The reason that we're here is because we want other places and other NGOs and other governments to jump that learning curve. We've already done it. We've already proven the concept. We have these systems in place, and we have the methodologies that are available, and we have the software that is also available. So I think that conversation just has to happen in order to look at what your local context is, because it's all about the local context and how we can adapt directly to that. And we can.
Yeah, so just regarding the technology of the carbon ecosystem, it's already adapted to other sectors. I think maybe Abby can tell about Calido's marketplace, how other projects can be integrated.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned methane, I think, right? I think it's even worse than CO2, obviously. The projects which we have on the platform, they go through a very, strict quality assessment. First, with an algorithm layer of data, and then a manual due diligence, which we do with our scientists in Europe, where we are located. We do not care about registries or locations. We care about methodologies. We care about methodologies because, as you said, Laura, the time is ticking, and we can't wait for technical solutions right now. I mean, if you look at direct air capture, for example, everybody will tell you it takes another 10 to 15 years to be technically and economically scalable. So nature is the solution. Right now we are working, as I mentioned, with 4 verticals. It's forest, rec-ag, peatlands and oceans. And for methane, we did not find the right methodology just yet. Yeah, it doesn't mean much. So we just did not get any comfort right now. And we are also not only looking for CO2, we are looking at this very holistically. So for us, biodiversity, natural resource, especially water, there's a huge, for example, chemical industry in Europe. They're really looking into this whole water situation, but also social impact is paramount. I mean, we are not only looking at CO2. So that's why if the methodologies are there and there is an audit and also a verification, we're more than happy to take them on, but it needs to go through our due diligence. That's the main.
And finally, in the case of the government, we know, especially in Latin America and in the global South, that including new taxes, it's a difficult issue to adopt and to be accepted by the population. When we design policies, we establish 4 bases for a new policy. First, of course, laws, all the ordinance around the standards and all the things that the government needs to develop in order to be a framework, to give a framework about a specific policy. Second is technical, and third, economical feasibility for the implementation of any specific policy. But the fourth, and not less important, is social support. If you don't have your own people convinced about a topic, about climate change, about circular economy processes, or the necessity to change the way in which we have been developing our economies in the global south, this policy are going to be lacking in a few years. So in this way, I think is it possible to use other kind of taxes or other kind of incentives coming from the government, and we can experiment trying to implement a specific suit sizes for Cordoba on their own perspective, their own stakeholders, and start a process with the stakeholders and the local population, trying to establish using some of these local taxes that you have right now, and trying to convert the benefits for compensation for the companies using these taxes that you have right now. So I think it's possible.
Thank you, Ricardo. So as time flies, and I'm sure you have much more questions, perhaps we will finish here with our closing remarks, and Martin will show us the live demonstration, and then I invite you to talk to your to the panelists outside and grab a coffee, and I guess there will be enough time for it. So I will hand over, first of all, and also thank you for your questions. So, Ricardo, closing remarks, it's your part.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for your time this morning to hear about an innovative and a specific strategy coming from the state of Querétaro that wants to develop a local action in order to decarbonize our economy, looking answers from our people, looking answers from our own companies, and joining many technologies that can solve these main problems that the companies and the project developers are facing in the process to decarbonize their products and their economies. With SeaGreen, you can have an option to calculate
their product emissions and the company processes emissions, and make it cheaper and make it faster, because by now the companies in Querétaro takes 6 months to calculate and to develop their own inventory. Then, when we want to develop local projects, we need financing, and we are connecting the companies with the local people in order to promote this kind of little projects that can help a region to decarbonize the economy. In the forest, we have many questions, and Open Forest have applied their technology in order to bring accuracy and transparency about this specific project, and working together with Grupo around a strategy for over decades, in which the local owners are put in the center of the discussion and the solution also. And at the end, Calerius help us to identify all the projects that we can develop and that are available for the companies in order to make easier the process to choose, because most of the companies in Querétaro produce a low levels of CO2. And if they need to spend a lot of time and money to choose and identify a project, they are not going to compensate their emissions. They are going to pay the tax, because it's easier for them to pay the tax, especially when they emit a low amount of emissions. For them, it's easier to pay the tax. So we are proposing them and giving to them this specific tools in which they can make it easier for them and decide for the compensation and decide for getting involved in this specific strategy and this specific project in Sierra Gorda. Most of the companies that after the compensation, even when they only compensate 100 or 1,000 tons in Querétaro, they will go to Sierra Gorda and visit the local owners. They get in love of the process and very compromised and committed to reduce their emissions, especially the direct emissions that are regulated for the state, and being part of this strategy. So thank you so much. We are going to be here for a few minutes more in order to answer the question, and then I ask all the participants of the protocol for the signing of the addendum of the MOU. As I said before, we have developed this strategy in 4 touch points. First, last climate week, it's been a meeting in a coffee shop with Gunter. After that, we decided to sign our first MOU with the governor of Querétaro, Governor Mauricio Curi, in Dubai. Then in Hanover, in the automotive fair in Germany, the governor and the secretary Marco joined with Gunter in order to amplify and extend the purposes of the MOU. And this morning, signing the last addendum with Grupo and other participants of this strategy, on which we are going to work over the next months and years. Thank you. You want to use that?
Sorry, no, it's dead. Michael, yeah, Michael. Yeah, exactly. Why, right? Yeah, exactly.
Alex.
Oh, Miguel?
Yeah. Yeah, you. Could you stay there? Like signing.
Signing again.
Should we come all together? David, 75.
Yes, it does. For some reason, my